We also see this ikhwan and the likes. In our time, the likes of the noble scholar, Shaykh Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani, who the people falsely, ikhwan, accused of being murjid. Rather, we find Shaykh al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, from the staunchest of the people in defending the sunnah. Look in the works of Shaykh al-Albani. Look in Ahkam al-Janaiz. Look in his book on Hajj. Look in his book, Ikhwan al-Barifikum, on the funeral rites, on prayer. You will find sections at the end of those works, Ikhwan, clarifying the innovations of those acts of worship. Clarifying and refuting those innovations in those acts of worship. A defender of the sunnah, a defender of the hadith. And as Shaykh al-Uthaymin, he said, ikhwan, regarding this, either they don't know Shaykh al-Albani or they don't know irja'. I call your attention, ikhwan, to a clear refutation upon them from Shaykh al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, in the introduction to his checking of Riyadh al-Salihin, in the narration of Abu Hurairah, radiyallahu anhu, inna Allah la yandur ila ajsamikum wa la ila surikum walakin yandur ila qulubikum. That Allah does not look at your shapes and your forms, but rather He looks at your hearts. And the Shaykh al-Albani mentions, and that narration is collected by Imam Muslim in the Sahih. And the Shaykh al-Albani, he mentions, however, there is an authentic additional wording to this narration that must be added for proper understanding of the narration. He does not look at your shapes and your forms, but rather He looks at your hearts, wa a'malikum, and your actions. And your actions. And in the explanation of this narration, in that introduction, Shaykh al-Albani goes on point after point, narration after narration, clarifying that actions are from Iman. And this, ikhwan, is a clear refutation upon the murjia. And to the point, ikhwan, that Shaykh al-Albani says that if you were to command one of these individuals with growing the beard or the raising their lower garment above their ankle bones, they would answer you with what is in their hearts. They will respond to you with what is in their hearts. And the Shaykh al-Albani said, but however, is it something that one can understand that a person's heart can be corrupt and evil, but we see good on the outside, or vice versa? And then he mentions the narration of the Messenger of Allah that indeed in every body there's a piece of flesh. If that piece of flesh is sound and whole, then the whole of the body is whole. And if that piece of flesh is corrupt, then the whole of the body is corrupt. 𝙈 𝙖𝙢𝙖. And indeed it is the heart. So Shaykh al-Albani is mentioning this, ikhwan, again in refutation of these individuals from the likes of the murjia. This is what we find from Shaykh al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala. But as we mentioned last night, we find from these individuals, ikhwan, that they would busy themselves with refuting the likes of Shaykh al-Albani, an imam in the sunnah, an imam in hadith, that you find them silent, ikhwan, as it relates to the likes of Sayyid Qutb. You find them quiet, ikhwan, as it relates to the likes of al-Mawdudi and other than them. Let us think, ikhwan, for a second, as Shaykh Rabi' he mentioned regarding the affairs of the Haddadiyah, that from the Haddadis, ikhwan, were those who would go about and they would try to buy the cassettes of Shaykh al-Albani and the works of Shaykh al-Albani, purposely going through them, trying to find mistakes, trying to make tatabbu' of Shaykh al-Albani so as to find mistakes to refute him. And Shaykh Rabi', he mentioned that the likes of this Mahmud Haddad, who wrote an entire work in a so-called refutation of Shaykh al-Albani, close to 500 pages in longhand, written by hand, 500 pages. But as Shaykh Rabi' mentioned, we don't see a page or a sentence against the likes of Sayyid Qutb. One ikhwan who demeaned the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who cursed the companions, reviled the companions, who called to wahdatul wujud, who made blanket takfir of whole societies, ikhwan. Not a sentence against Sayyid Qutb, but yet you write 500 pages in your own hand against an imam of the sunnah like Shaykh al-Albani. So this, ikhwan, goes back to what we talked about last night, that you'll find one of them who will busy himself with refuting the people of sunnah, but he is quiet as it relates to the people of innovation.